These three gentlemen and their departments have listened to architects and other professionals the last few years. Are all working on making the permitting process better. We wanted to offer them a chance to talk to us this time, and we can listen to them to hear what maybe they need. So with that, I'm going to leave it off to Jonathan Moore for the moderation, and we'll get into the panel.
You went 1 minute long. We're behind schedule now.
Okay, well, speak quick.
All right, I will. You guys hear me all right? So I'm Jonathan Moore. I'm the president of Envision Advisors. We're owners' representatives for 30 projects that are either in permitting or have permits with these three jurisdictions right now. I'm real glad you guys are here. Welcome. A simple truth at Envision is 95% of problems are caused by a lack of communication. We brought this panel together to improve the way plans are reviewed and permits are issued. So with that, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself with a little asterisk. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? Now, I'll go first. Mine, of course, would be the Force from Star Wars, right? It's the perfect combination of mental and physical, so none of you can have the Force. So, John, take it away.
Do I respond?
Yes, please. I think they're on. Oh, no, they're not.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so if I could have any superpower in the world, what would that be?
Yeah.
That would be the superpower to have all the wisdom that is sitting in this room, plus all the members that are not sitting in this room, to be able to make really wise choices on design and application of code. And I'd like to see my two partners sitting at the table win that one over.
JC.
Oh, let's see. Probably cloning, because I'd like to be in multiple places at one time, because I know you guys call me for multiple meetings, and it's only so many hours in the day. So if I could be sitting in this office working on a plan review and over here talking about alternative means, I would probably choose that as my superpower.
So I might have to rewind a little bit. John Barrios, Hillsborough County. Next.
JC Hudgison, City of Tampa.
Don Tyre, City of St. Pete.
Don follows directions.
Yeah, well, I listen. Good listener. I don't know. I think I would probably go similar to JC, not cloning, but maybe like the Flash, speed, super speed. I could
With reviewing permits?
Well, sure, that works. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
Thank you, Don. So we polled thousands of architects before we got to this panel and sifted through hundreds of questions to come up with what we're going to ask tonight. At the end, we'll take some additional audience questions that the cards were figured out. So here we go. The first question I have is, how can architects make the review process smoother? Can you describe some horror stories of things that you've seen that made you immediately reject a set of plans? Start with John.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, I know we're in the month of October, and we're coming up upon Halloween season, but I would hardly characterize anything that we've experienced as a horror story. Okay, that reminds me of the series of Halloween. What are we up to now? Halloween 7 or 8, 9 movies?
28.
At least 28, yeah. Exactly. No, certainly no horror stories, certainly challenges. And I would like to introduce today two individuals that are with me, two of my associates. Heather Tank, if you would stand, Heather. Heather is our executive manager for all of permitting and plan review. That's the name you want to remember, not necessarily mine. And also in the back, waving, is Nicole Turner, and she is our manager of all permitting. And I know we're in a group of friendly architects and friendly folks, two architects, but both of them are engineers, and they're quite fine people. But anyway, we will be hiring an architect actually to assist them here very, very shortly, just to even the balance and the discussion at home. in terms of, we've got some information that we'd like to share. Is it up on the board? It is. Okay. That was a tricky thing. I didn't know that was already up there. As far as what can you do to help yourself and your client get through the permitting process. And I'd like to first say that all three of us up here and most code officials throughout the state of Florida as well as the rest of the nation really are here to facilitate your project and get you to where you want to go, and get you to where you want to be or need to be based on your client's needs. The challenge is, and the route to get there can be confusing, can be convoluted at times, and God knows that Florida is one of the most regulated states in the nation, so that pathway can be quite difficult. But preparing yourselves and preparing your set of drawings in a manner that is as permit ready as it possibly can be, take just a few more hours to double check the work of your subordinates, do a little bit of QA, QC on your own work. You will find that that will bode extremely well as you're going through the permitting process. Most of us up here have some level of permit sufficiency checklist on our particular website. This is an example of what we have available for you. And I see that my brother-in-arms here, JC, brought hard copies for all of you to take back and probably throw away in your trash can. They're all available on his website, as well as Dave and mine as well. Well, Don, I'm sorry, as ours. All of this information is available on our website. And so they're handy checklists. They're not going to cover every single project that you might run across, but they're going to give you really good guidance on particularly the areas that we see the greatest amount of deficiencies, which usually are not the technical code questions or interpretations, but the things that are ordinary. Oh my God, I submitted this set of plans and I forgot to connect or drop in the plumbing plans, okay? That's frustrating. That results in an automatic rejection right there at application review. Got to get back in the queue line afterwards, whereas if somebody would have taken just a few more minutes to double check that, that's something that's, so it's benign, as simple as that is, that's some of the best advice that I could probably provide. We, on the next slide, and I'll make this very, very quick, we do provide electronic submittal of plans just like our peers up here do. And we do provide those services both on the residential and commercial side. And you can see up there, it's not only can you get a simple trade permit as a subcontractor, submit residential new construction, but you can also ask for an official, building official determination. If you're looking for a specific determination, or if you wish to submit on behalf of your client an equivalent method of compliance, or as we call an alternate method of or material, you can make that request also online within our website.
JC, I think John just threw the gauntlet down. You're on.
Well, most of it, like I said, I went old school, so I do have hard copies here for the for the different permit types. From our perspective, the city of Tampa, unfortunately, I would like to say I haven't had any horror stories. I've only been here 18 months, so I see a few faces that are familiar, but they were on positive projects and we're making the right directions. So kind of the poll that you sent to us, we then sent it to my client facilitation staff and the plan review staff. And I asked, hey, what are you missing? What's kicking back the most? So from our intake, kind of as John mentioned, some of the items, you know, sometimes your FEMA docs are missing. You know that we're in floodplain haven here. So making sure that those documentation, the elevations are there. Energy calcs, like you said, it's just something that's a documentation that's just not in there. Typically at that first level of sufficiency, we're going to kick it back. And site plans, understanding that if we have setbacks and things like that, if that's not a part of the plans, that's going to stop right at the client facilitation stage. Our plan reviewers are not even going to see it. Now, under the plan review stage, we do get a little bit more technical. Once again, kind of piggybacking off of John, is that a lot of times we don't get the MEP drawings. If you're saying that the architectural set is there, and then they're saying refer to electrical, and we see there's no E drawings, there's no P drawings, you know, so the first comment going back is, you know, where are our electrical drawings, where are our plumbing drawings? One of our big things is we set the tone based off of the code summary page. So if you come in and tell me that you're using type 5B, which is anything allowed in the code, then that's what we're okay. But if we see something that you're telling me it's 1 or 2, and I see a stick of wood in there, I'm gonna be like, well, you know, that is, you know, so immediately we're looking at our code summaries to determine what that is. What's your use of the building? You know, obviously we know accessory uses, things like that. That code summary really sets the tone. So as our staff goes, that's the first page we see, and then that's how we're interpreting the rest of the building, whether it's a hazard type, whether it's facilities, whether it's business, assembly, that's how we set the tone of where the permit goes. So if we see that that's an error at first, we're like, uh-oh. We're going to start asking the questions based off of that type. You'd be like, well, no, I didn't mean that to be that. And we're like, well, that's what the plan says. I'm going by what you provided in the plan. So I think typically those are one of the things, and kind of using, I know there's another question kind of about this with other departments. So say if you're getting a rezoning, or you're getting a PD, or you're getting any of these other things, we can't approve the building permit until all of those other things are in place. So even though they're in the chute or in the queue, we'll have to either hold them or deny them because we don't want it sitting there in the queue not being looked at because those things aren't there. So we're like, well, hey, if you're getting a reduction in parking, or you got a reduction in your setback, and it has to go through another department, we see that, and we make the comment, urban design makes the comment, if we have, you know, Barrios, whatever, the, you know, historic, all of those things have to be taken care of before you come to see us. So we love to say that we're simultaneous, but we don't know if that's going to get approved. So we got to make sure that that's approved first before we go through the plan. So that's kind of, from my point of view, the things that we would like to kind of make the process a little smoother.
Thanks, JC. Don?
Well, John and JC covered everything, so I don't have to talk. But I will take a moment, since John mentioned the two engineers that he brought with him. We are hiring in St. Pete, you know, so everyone in here is licensed. So, you know, a little bit of a recruitment quickly. But no, all kidding aside, you know, we have a pretty good group of people in St. Pete. No horror stories. Obviously, you know, in the design process and the permitting process, it's still a paper plan or electronic plan. You can usually work things out. I will share quickly one issue, and this was like a project that happened 20 years ago, and it was kind of a learning experience for the inspection group. It was a retail chain store, restaurant. I won't say who it was, but you know, they had all their inspections. They were getting ready to cover with drywall, and you know, everything was good. They followed the revision to, you know, change the plumbing specs, and of course the engineer wouldn't approve it. What had happened, their chain store is kind of a northern chain, and they spec out everything copper, cast iron. They want everything individually vented, and the contractor went ahead and just built it to code, and our plumbing inspector inspected it to code. They battery vented everything, used CPVC, plastic pipe, PVC, and they basically ended up ripping everything out because he would not approve the change order. So, you know, it's just lesson learned, and, you know, obviously that's in Chapter 1 of the building code. We inspect per the code, but also per the approved, you know, plans from the design professional. So, you know, those are the things that are difficult to deal with. You can always change the design when it's still on paper, but when something like that just kind of gets overlooked, if somebody would have just glanced at the plans, why they're actually building it, you know, it would have solved a huge issue. But overall, you know, what you can do to kind of streamline the process and help yourself in the permitting process, I kind of break it up residential and commercial because they're really two different type projects. Single family, I think you really need to focus on FEMA, as JC said. Half of our city's in a flood zone, special flood hazard area. The other aspect for single family is the zoning regulations, and I'm not talking about setbacks. It's more the design regulations that are involved now for zoning. They're fairly complicated, even for somebody in the trades. So I would focus on those. I mean, we hardly have any problems with structural or any other code issues with single family. You just get those worked out through the permitting process and inspections. Commercial, you know, a little different animal. Obviously, FEMA can still play a big picture just because half the city's in a flood zone area. But I would really focus on, you know, your code summary for life safety review, both building and fire code. I would put both of those on the plan all the time. Just another example, and I'm sure everyone in this room, or at least half the people in this room, at some point in time has come across this one specific issue because, I basically get a phone call about it. It seems like once a week, but it's probably a couple times a month. And, who here, a stairwell in any building, commercial, a 7-Eleven stair, basically, you have handrails, guardrails, and the handrails, building code, we always spec out 1.5 inches. Now, who here has been cited by the fire department because they wanted to be 2¼ inches? It's probably half the people in this room. Okay, and that's just one of those little tiny differences that the two codes will probably never agree on. But, so I think it's critical to focus on both fire code and building code when you're talking about commercial projects and do that due diligence. And then the other large item, I think JC touched on it, is, the MEP coordination, especially on commercial. That's where some of the projects can kind of fall apart a little bit. Just making sure that your consulting engineers are on board with the same, design, process. And then that just saves us from having to kind of drill through everything and going back and forth constantly, with a battle. And it just kind of opens the door up for miscommunication between plan review and the design professionals. So I would focus kind of on those couple things. And I think it'll steer the ship in the right direction.
Yeah. Thanks, Don. And we, in fairness, we did invite the fire marshals here. They knew that y'all three were going to be here. They were scared that you'd want to go toe-to-toe on that 2¼ 1.5. So they politely declined. So I'll keep moving. I'm an old guy. I know there's a couple old guys in the room, like Carlos Molnar, turned 67 yesterday. Remember the days of signing and sealing thousands of sheets of drawings, lugging them to the permit office? We now see shifts in permit submittal to digital submission. JC, I'm going to ask you to start with this question. I know that you are the Acela Pro. Can you tell us about the experience that the jurisdictions are having with digital submittals, and again, what can we do to help the process?
I'll start off to say yes. I'm a big technology buff, so even though, like I said, I did go old school with the plans, bringing the documents to you all. But personally, coming from a jurisdiction that had not gone, like we were 100% paper, to come to Tampa that is there and fully digital, really allowed projects to continue to go through the pandemic. Because ideally, if your front office is not open, and therefore not being able to physically come in and ask some of those questions. I know that part was a little difficult, but still being able to submit plans, get comments, get reviews, we were able to continue working throughout the entire pandemic. So coming out of it now, it's like, well, I think we just looked at the stats this month. I think I have 97% of my permits come in digitally. I literally have 3% that people are still walking up to the counter, paying over the counter, and things like that. So we're getting, that number seems every fiscal year gets smaller and smaller. On my budget hat, I always have to think about my credit card fees, but that's another argument. But, but as we go through the documentation and those plans are coming in digitally, we're able to resolve a lot of things. We're not having to, somebody's checking out the set of plans and everybody's writing comments and then who's got that set of plans and trying to chase that person down in the department. We've all got a set. As long as you have access to Acela, it takes you right to ePermit Hub. So my group, along with natural resources, right of way, mobility, everyone that has access to those plans can make comments. So then therefore, when we send the comments back out, all of those groups have comments that are on that same drawing. So we can, if we have discrepancies, even internally, we can see those things on the plan. So it's really helped. The only negative I will say, I think if a few of you may have ran into it, is your digital certification and that stamp coming through the PDF, and sometimes that got a little funky. We've got a few tips and tricks on our website to kind of get a few people through that, but mostly I would say it's been very positive. Everything has been able to go digitally. You get your login, you're able to get in and get set up. Even if you're a contractor new coming into the system, we have several how-to guides to get contractors kind of into the groove and understanding how to be a part of the process. And as the plans go through, one of the things I do appreciate with Acela is that you do get those email notifications. Mm-hmm. So as the plans are rejected or approved or they're ready for issuance, you get that notification. So as long as you're a part attached to the permit file, so is the design design professional or the GC, you're getting those emails as they are going through. So that helps the process, because we'll get that, someone calls and says, hey, you haven't looked at our plans. If they'll say awaiting client reply, or they've been issued, or they were denied, and then you can click into the link and it gives you the deficiency. So we're trying to work that out. So like I said, you still can't get away from being face-to-face. So as much as I love the pandemic and we were all virtual and virtual meetings, now I have a meeting on the hour every hour. So I kind of prefer having a face-to-face meeting, but I think a lot of these digital things we were able to get done, and it really has made it a positive experience.
Thanks, JC. Don?
Well, we were electronic before the pandemic, but we only probably did about maybe 15–20% electronic. Everything else was paper. Now, when COVID hit, we basically flipped a switch, tried to go 100% electronic. It was a disaster. There's a huge learning curve, both sides, my staff, the public, developers, architects, engineers. Everyone was struggling with it. We upgraded the software. We're not on Acela, we're on Evolve. And our database is Naviline. But we've kind of got that worked out. We updated the software. It was 5 years old, so it's working much better now. But one of the largest things that we kind of learned, we kind of have two processes. We basically use email PDFs for anything that doesn't have to be engineered, and then we have the e-plan system to do basically everything else. We do still have a service, as JC mentioned. We probably have about maybe 5% that are paper plans. They still come in 10 sheets or less, kind of over-the-counter type projects. We'll scan it in for the people, and we do that mainly to service homeowner permits, single family, that type of thing. But we will also do small commercial projects, condo renovations, even some small mom and pop restaurants, because it's not a huge project. We'll scan it in, get it into the system for them. We have made one change recently, probably within the past month. During the learning curve, going to e-plan 100% for the most part, we kind of found, we were tracking it, people were struggling getting it in, and they were playing basically, phone tag or, upload drawing tag back and forth between the design professional, and they didn't know they had the job task. They didn't click the right box. They thought they sent it back in. There was no confirmation. They didn't know. And so, some plans were taking 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get through pre-screening to get into the system. So we've kind of changed that. We turned off the automatic portion of that. So now to get a permit application, you basically have to either call in or email a live person. Okay, we have 6 people in the staff and the e-plan. They basically function as e-plan help desk, and their job basically is to try to help you get it formatted correctly, get it into the system. So it's basically the same day you get your permit application, it's in the system. And then one of the benefits from e-plan is it goes to every department at the same time. It's in the queue then. It's been improving as far as I can tell, but it's kind of a little bit early in the process. But I think that's a huge help. If you do a lot of permitting in St. Pete, once you learn the system, you'll have everything correct. You still have to contact that live person, and they'll get it in for you. But, somebody new, or you don't do a lot of work in St. Pete, or you're out of state, and, you just never used our system before, it can be kind of daunting sometimes. So, it is a little bit of a task for us to do it with, manpower and stuff. But so far, I'd rather do that. Those same staff members that are taking it are also processing it, whether it needs corrections or permitting to process it to actually, issue it. So, they're basically the swinging door with stuff coming in and going out, and they're your frontline contact people. And so far, it's actually improved quite a bit.
Thanks, Don. John?
Okay, as Carlos and Peter have always taught me throughout my career and dealing with your group, digital is where it's at. So we've taken the opportunity to learn from JC and his 95 percentile, and our friend from St. Pete who are also experiencing and moving in this direction. And I'm happy to report that we are 100% digital. It was a nightmare of a learning curve. It was not simple by any stretch of the imagination. And I got the scars on my back to prove it. But we are 100% digital. and have been now for probably the beginning of this calendar year when we transition to the same system that JC now has. And if I could, there we go. There's my favorite slide up there. If you come to our Hills Grub Hub website, you will automatically be delivered your permit through Grubhub services free of charge and on the day you request it. I wish. Okay. Hills Gov Hub, which was not my favorite name, and I'm sorry, but I continue to call it Grub Hub, especially when my bosses are not around, and I can joke with it. But it is the name of our website, and some of the benefits of e-permitting are up there on the board. They speak for themselves. It is truly a streamlined process. And what's most important, I think, to all of you is that it's a transparent process. It's one that at all times when you've submitted your drawings and you've uploaded and you've passed the many, many gates that we put in front of you, and you're on the other side of those gates, now, you can see the status of your project at all times. It's also very predictable. When you submit your plans, we all up here have KPIs or levels of service that we are striving to achieve 95% of the time. And you can predict, once you get to know that particular jurisdiction, with a fairly high degree of accuracy, how quickly you're going to get your first cycle comments back, second cycle comments back, whatever the case might be. Everything is secure. That's a big concern for a lot of design professionals. After all, this is your intellectual property that you're submitting and is being circulated as part of the public realm. The timely corrections and resubmittals, as JC was indicating, the system generates upon failure of a review, all parties, and hopefully you will attach yourself or someone in your office to that particular record so that you will be immediately notified once the cycle is completed as to the status of your review. You'll know whether or not you can jump for jubilation or get back to the office and say, boss, we got a few corrections that we've got to make. Communication with the new digital plan room. I hope you all, if you haven't had a chance to submit electronically or digitally to any one of us, I encourage you to do so. I think you're really going to love the ability to interact with your plan reviewer at the level of page where the corrections have been called out, so that if on page A7 we find some hardware problems that are incorrect and the code requires panic hardware to be installed and you've got conventional hardware, you'll be able to determine right by the notations and the marking on the drawing which door we're actually talking about, which piece of hardware we're actually talking about. And I think that makes your job extremely easier to deal with, because if you read my rejection comments from the not too distant past, I would say fix hardware architectural drawings, and you would sit back and say, which one? Okay, which of the 275 doors are you talking about? So this really keeps myself and my staff very much in line to what it is that we are basically disapproving and asking you to correct and address. On the next page of our website is just a sample of the entry into Hills Gov Hub. And then the following page is where you'll find the various types of projects. I'm sorry, just a more detailed view of the entry point when you're establishing your record for the first time or your permit application for the first time. And then lastly, the next page will be, I know you guys can't see this, but we'll make all of these pages available to you. where you'll select your various project types that you will want to select depending upon the type of project. And by the way, we copied JC almost verbatim, and I give him and his staff full credit for that because we know it's difficult for us in the county. We like to name things differently than folks in the city, but we know that most of you work, at least on this side of the bay, on both jurisdictions. He established the name. A potato is a potato, not a potato. So potato is fine with us. And so, so we wanted to try to maintain as much consistency as we possibly could.
Thanks, John. I want to skip ahead. I had some notes about how we deal with different departments. I think we've sort of covered that a little bit, but there are some jurisdictions, or maybe I'll rephrase this, some mayors out there that talk about these fast passes, these walk in and walk out with a building permit. I have a 300,000 square foot commercial office in my car. If I could go and get it, maybe walk in and walk out tonight with a permit. Can you talk about what sort of accelerated services you guys might offer for a small project? And I'll start with Don.
Well, when it was paper plans before COVID, we would weigh the plans. If it was 10 pounds or less, So we do an over-the-counter service. We call it over-the-counter, fast pass, basically very similar, commercial or residential. We used to do it Tuesday or Thursday mornings between 8 and 12, okay? That's when we're in paper plans before COVID. COVID hit. Everything went crazy. Had to go basically digital on everything. Now, we're still offering the same very similar service, but we want you to make an appointment. We basically schedule 1-hour appointments. You can schedule it on the website. We used to have Q-List. Now I think it's Qmatic. And then I think there's either 12 or 16 spots per day. Luckily, the fire, engineering, zoning group, they all work out of the same building. The fire plan reviewers and inspectors work out of my shop. So everyone's there. They know if you're coming in. We can do a small restaurant. We can do a renovation, condo renovation, whatever. And there's a good chance that you may leave with a permit. If not, you at least leave with a few comments that you may have, and then you could resubmit the same way. Short of that, we also have a process. If you submit and goes through E-Plan, it's kind of a 3-day kind of turnaround review, and there's a list of projects on that. It's on our website, and that's really more for like the condo renovations and just straightforward things. Maybe even some service permits that need review, plan review. So, it seems like it's worked very well, but it's a little weird now. Old school, Tuesday, Thursday, we used to be busy. People were lined up out the door. There was 30 people in line. Now that we went to the appointment process, and COVID, and it may just be because we're more electronic now, but we only probably do a few appointments a day. So there are appointments out there. You don't have to wait in the queue. Our typical performance goal, like John said, for commercial is 3 weeks. But if you have a condo renovation, and even if it's a couple $100,000 and you have good MEP drawings, just set an appointment, come in, we'll see if we can get you a permit, and you can leave with it.
Like it. Thanks, John.
This John.
John. You're JC. You're John. No, you guys get what I'm doing here. I'm rotating. John, please. Hillsborough County.
Well, actually, I was hoping you'd call on JC first. I'd love to go behind him on this one. We are kind of working on a fast pass. Now you know why I wanted JC to go first. We, very much as Don said, we had sort of a fast pass process back in the paper day. Since we've gone fully digital earlier this year, we've not been able to return to that. We're still stabilizing. We're about ready to venture onto additional new services like a fast pass. I won't bore you with my back history, but I've always enjoyed the ability to provide that kind of, some folks call them over-the-counter, fast pass. It goes by a whole bunch of different names. But the reality is particularly on smaller projects, where particularly the design professional, maybe the contractor, sometimes the owner can sit down with a small team on our side, work through a quick review, may hit the high points, provide some instant feedback, and if everything is absolutely A-OK, perhaps walk out the building with a permit. More than likely, you walked out with a short list of corrections that were required, and that was considered pretty good high service. We are taking notes. My associates are with what my peers are doing. So we will be instituting something in this order in the very near future. And doggone it, I didn't get to go last on this one. But anyway, JC?
I'm sorry about that, John. JC?
All right. Right now, we do have a fast pass program that allows for same-day review for projects that do not require participation for other city divisions. So if it's not historic preservation or natural resources or FEMA or right-of-way, we do allow those. Right now, what we have eligible is for interior alterations, screen enclosures, pools, perimeter walls, generators, not necessarily thing architects are dealing with. I think our pool installers have really taken to that program. It's literally once a week on Thursdays from 8 to 10 is kind of where it is right now. They set an appointment. Once they come in, they've sent the drawings prior to us looking at them, so we can kind of make comments where, okay, you just need to adjust your site plan, make this and that change. What we're adding now, which is Queue Up Tampa, which allows you to create appointments at any time that you want during the day. So if you come in and say, hey, I want to be a part of the Fast Pass and I meet those qualifications, and even if you don't, you can still have a virtual communication face-to-face through FaceTime with our plan reviewers. So therefore, we set it up where you can come in, you get that information, and kind of understanding where we need to go. Obviously, as John's mentioned, there is a lot of gates there, and we're starting to work on a little bit better of the collaboration internally. So therefore, stormwater kind of understands where we're going with these things. Right-of-way understands where we're going with these other things. So we have that trust that everyone understands that, yes, that we're putting it out. It is, they give us those standards that then therefore we can regurgitate to you all to tell y'all these are what the roadway standards or site clearances and elliptical pipes and right-of-way when you're doing driveways across, all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to work better to kind of coordinate a lot of those. But typically, like I said, currently right now through our Fast Pass, it's been primarily the pool contractors because, like I said, it's just to set on the pool. Some of them send us prefab designs, and they're just saying is on the site plan, we're going to set it here. And we're like, approved. And they're walking out the door. So some of those low-hanging fruit, we're able to kind of at least keep off the rolls and keep rolling and keep going. So, and ideally, I want to pitch queup.tampa.gov. You can come up, and as soon as you click in it, takes you right to the site. You can do virtual, and you can get a virtual client facilitation to do your sufficiency check. You can do a pre-app review or a TAC meeting with your plan reviewer to go through comments that are on the plans. So we usually set those in hour increments. You can come in 30 minutes to an hour, just letting us know, and it's live to everyone's schedule. So all of our staff, based off if they're in town or out of town, if they're on break, whatever their lunch break is, it won't show up, obviously. And then you can pick that in a day in advance, at least, to tell us what time you want to be there. We try to do the virtual the communication across the board, because as you all understand, sometimes those emails back and forth or just comments on a piece of paper, sometimes, like you said, potato, sometimes it's taken differently through an email, and to kind of talk to a person virtually to see them kind of understand where we're trying to go with that, as opposed to 3 emails you can get taken care of in one conversation. So we're trying to use that. So that's queup.tampa.gov.
Thanks, JC. Talk about private providers for just a second. Knowing that those fire marshals that were invited that were scared of you guys that didn't come, we can talk about the fire marshals. Probably 30% of my projects right now are going through private providers at some degree. We always have the conversation about, well, but the fire marshal still has to get involved and site still has to get involved. Can you guys talk a little bit about how that interface happens from your side, and do you ever see a time that private providers may come in and be able to facilitate fire or site? John, we'll start with you.
Can I go first this time?
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay. We love our private providers, especially since they are primary supporters of tonight's event. So we want to make sure to put that plug in there.
Thank you.
Way to go, John.
Got to know your audience, right? No, private providers are governed by very specific statements in the Florida statute, 553. Our role in interaction with private providers are very, very well defined statutorily. That being said, specifically, private providers are not permitted under the statute to perform fire reviews or fire inspections. So it's not really a question of whether a private provider desired or didn't desire, or whether the community desired it. It's actually established this way in the community itself. My experience with private providers, when we talk about all of the site engineering, let's just talk about site codes in general. This is your zoning, stormwater, transportation, tree and landscaping, natural resources, most folks refer to it as utilities, all those kinds of fields. Most private providers do not feel like they are specifically qualified or have staff qualified in order to provide those services. The statute does not necessarily exclude them from dabbling in that area. What I typically hear is private providers would prefer not to dabble in those areas for a variety of reasons, probably some of that being their own liability insurance coverages. So the end result is when a private provider project comes within our jurisdiction, and in our particular case, everything comes in digitally. If it's a commercial project, what we highly encourage our constituents and our developers and builders is to initiate the site review as early as possible, particularly on the commercial side. As with my two associates' jurisdictions, on the commercial side, there's lots and lots of regulations, lots of hurdles to overcome to achieve success and final approval of your site. And it's not just necessarily the regulations at the local level. You have state and sometimes federal regulations that apply to a particular site. We are obviously a very, very green state, not only physically green, but also green in a lot of sustainability initiatives that have come out of Tallahassee. But the reality is that if an owner developer can get a leg up and initiate that process usually takes months to accomplish, particularly on any medium to larger size project, because of the magnitude of what's being involved. That provides the private provider, who is typically looking at the vertical construction and compliance with the Florida Building Code, enough time to complete their review and not conflict whatever might come out of the site side. The fire review of that vertical building or the site itself that vertical building is sitting on is typically fairly straightforward. We've not typically had a great deal of delay or issues or problems coming out of the fire review that's done at the local level. Very much like the building code, the fire code is, I won't say it's black and white, I certainly won't go that far, but most of the criteria are very well understood by this audience and most of the engineering community. And folks that design fire suppression systems are usually very specialized. And so there's generally very little room for error, and there really typically aren't very many deficiencies. Now, we may have debates on some of the life safety issues, and that's where I think all of us would encourage the architects in the room, whether your owner, developer is already engaged in the site review or not, is to take advantage of the services we offer. For example, we offer in Hillsborough County a preliminary plan review service. I think Tampa does the same. Don, I know you do a similar thing. We all might call it separate, differently, but the reality is most of these services are available on our website, where you can engage us for a period of time, present some preliminary drawings to us. We can react to those drawings, give you feedback that will help you hone in on a final submittal to submit And if it is a private provider, to submit to the private provider for his review or their review, or if it's coming directly to us for our review. So these are extremely valuable services. They are usually paid for services, unless you're in Hillsborough County where we don't charge you for it, but if we will be charging you in the future, I assure you of that. But anyway, so that's something that I would say we love our private providers. There's no, frankly, to be honest with you, in times of boom like all of us have experienced here in the last several years, none of us could staff up to the level of expectation of all of our clientele if we did not have the ability for many of these projects to be completed by private providers. And by the way, while I'm speaking about private providers, we also utilize contract services. So a lot of the private provider firms also play dual roles where they have municipal service support that they also can provide. And then some others, that's all they do is just municipal services. And again, in the state of Florida, we're all required to be licensed. As all of us know, this is an extremely heavily regulated state. Our profession is no different than that. And so private providers their principals within those companies are required to be registered architects, registered engineers, or Florida certified building officials. So you are being serviced, and the client is being serviced by the appropriate expertise and licenses within the thing. So I'd like to think we have a very professional relationship, one that is free of animosity and gamemanship and all this other kind of stuff. We do like to poke at each other every now and then, just as as good professionals like to do. But I think in the end, we all understand the seriousness of the job that we've all got to do, regardless if you're on the private side or on the public sector side.
Thanks, John. JC, you got 7 seconds.
No problem. I can. We have a very good relationship. As John mentioned, I think it also helped us to be able to, some of those services to be provided. It definitely helped during the pandemic, obviously, having inspection services that were paused for a second before they picked back up. As you all have seen here, Water Street, Midtown Tampa, a lot of these projects were the private provider provided the inspection services. I mean, that is a definite benefit for our staff. We're handling over 500 inspections a day. So so that does allow us to do other things or stay caught up on other projects and perform inspections because we're not, necessarily saddled with those. Like I said, we've had several groups. We have several groups here locally, out of town, that have come in. I think probably the question I would ask is a lot of times when we get to the end, we're trying to close the job out and making sure that certificate that the private providers performed all the services, all of those things are in line. That's probably the only bone I have at that point, because that's when our inspectors get back involved with the process to say, hey, where are these inspections? We're looking for these, or you're supposed to coordinate these every 2 days, trying to kind of make sure, like I said, some of the bigger groups, yes, that they do a good job. Some of the smaller firms that are kind of just getting new to it, just kind of teaching them and counseling them as to, hey, this is what we're looking for when we look at our plan review, and this is what we're looking for when we see inspections. So I think primarily it's been a great thing, and we're able to kind of enhance it and keep going forward. Kind of what John said, I think a lot of the things at the state are going to create what those guardrails are. So, like I said, with FEMA regulations and things like that, I just don't see the state giving that up. So I don't think that necessarily would be anything we could resolve at this level. But like I said, whatever the statute is, and we'll follow it as it is provided.
Yep. Thanks, JC. Don? 2 seconds.
2. That's not a lot, but I mean, JC and John basically covered everything. But I will touch on the fact that we also have supplemental inspection services with private provider. Quorum is one of the contracts we have with, and they do a great job. In any given time, we probably have 1 or 2 trade inspectors that we're bringing in to help support staff. As far as like the specific like site plan review, stormwater, or fire review, and FEMA. as well. Those are very kind of jurisdiction specific, maybe not fire, but the site and FEMA definitely. So I don't really think that's ever going to change. That's always going to be something that you're going to have to review at the local level because everyone's ordinance is just a little bit different. And the private providers would have to learn, 30 different ordinances to be productive from that stance. Now, we did investigate because our fire marshal at one point had some staffing issues with inspections, and Safe Built, which we had a contract with for a while as well for private provider services, they had a contract with Orange County for fire services for plan review and inspections. It's not covered in 553, but under 633, it's just not really covered. So they looked at it. It's a viable option for them, not as a private provider where you can just do it and submit it where it's automatic, but as supplemental services. It never really, went through and got approved in St. Pete, but they did look at those options. Since then, they've increased staffing and hired a few people and resolved the staffing issue. But they have looked at it. Would it be a similar provision in 633 that they put in the building code section to cover private providers where it was basically an automatic, where we just have to accept it? I don't know if that's ever really going to happen.
Yeah, I guess I agree. Well, I had a FEMA question, but I think we've got to get out of here by midnight tonight. Maybe I'll turn it over to Peter, who has some questions from the audience, maybe FEMA related. I don't know.
Well,
take it away.
We're going to take it away. So some of you people here submitted some questions. We had some cards in the back. We have some people online in our Zoom. And as we were going through our conversation today, I'm looking at them and I'm realizing that these three gentlemen are answering the questions for the most part that were asked. So there was a lot of good information in three questions that you asked, Jonathan. Thank you. But I have two that I'd like to pose to you. One, hopefully, is a quickie. Maybe it's not. But I'm going to start off with this one. You all have made a lot of changes in the past couple of years to make things more efficient. But if there was one thing you could do to make it even more efficient, what would it be? And Don, I'll start with you.
One of the largest complaints I get, and it's both plan review and inspections, is consistency. And that's from each person because, obviously there's interpretation of the code, but, we have 22 inspectors and 12 plan reviewers. And it's something that I'm sure we all struggle with. And, you can do all the checklists you want, specific for every occupancy. You cannot cover everything, but just to make sure everyone's doing the same thing, you can take something, the smallest code book we have or whatever, just pick, handicap code or ADA, okay? You can ask 5 people the same question. That's been in the trade for 20 years apiece. You will get 5 different answers. And I'm sure that is a struggle for everybody. So, we're doing a few things where we have monthly meetings or basically roundtables for the inspection group and plan review group, really just to kind of discuss those things that have come up in recent projects. So hopefully, we will be more consistent. And that's just something that I've found that's one of our largest complaints.
JC and John, you want to play rock, paper, scissors to see who goes last? Or no, okay.
Quick, so I'll give this back to the architects and for the profession. I really think, like I said, architecture background, went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville, so, in Florida. But I would really push for architects to push more for CA fees. Because typically when we get to an end of a job and I get AMMRs and I get things and the architect walks on the site, it was like, well, this is not what was on my design. And we're like, well, now we got to go through an AMMR. We got to go through fire review. We've got to start, try to pull a rabbit out of a hat because the architect wasn't consistently involved. They did their job. You provided the documents, CDs, and you give them to the contractor. And you may have a interested client that wants to add this and there. You know how Scope Creek goes, and they want to add more bathrooms, and they want to turn this storage room into a bedroom, and then we've got some other issues, and we're like, well, how did this get here? Like Don mentioned, we're looking at it as the plans are developing, and we're getting to the end of a bigger project, and we're like, whoa, where's the architect in here? Who designed, this is not what was on the plans. The architect comes out and says, hey, I was not a part of this part of the process. So I would really push from the architecture perspective to probably push more on the CA fees, because I think that involvement with you all throughout the whole process helps us get to the finish line.
That's an excellent point, and I'd like to just build on that for a moment. I would love to be able to provide you, and for this particular profession and professions like yours that rely on us for information. We are in the information communication business. You know, this monument we're standing or sitting in is inanimate. You know, doesn't have any life to it other than what people put into it while they're designing it, while they're building it, and while they're occupying it. I would love to be able to provide this particular group more and different kinds of communication. For example, later this month, early November, we will be rolling out a service where our builders and all of their staff out in the field will be able to text inspection requests into our system, as well as receive the results of those by text. Today, they can do it by their smartphone by using what's basically the portal website, and they receive everything online. But today, the world is reduced down to text, short phrases, short number codes, and that's all I want to do. I don't necessarily want an email and have to go click on my phone, open up my email client, go look through my 27 emails to find the fact that I passed that inspection. I want my phone to ring, I want to look at it, I want to see that that is particularly passed right then, and that's simple. Architects, in your case, you want, most of you typically when we engage you on the phone or any other venue, you usually have a very specific question to ask. One that oftentimes doesn't require us to sit, you know, across the table from each other and looking at a design and trying to help you evaluate how does the code apply to it. Oftentimes you want, what is the standard dimension or the minimum height requirement for a guardrail in an institutional occupancy? Okay, it's that straightforward. Okay, and you should be able to text that or chat that question in to a central point where we should be able to filter, forward that to an appropriate party and get you back a response within a quick fashion. Now that sounds like it's pie in the sky, but the reality is it's happening elsewhere throughout the country. We have some very, very progressive building departments and building officials and folks who are moving in this direction and moving there faster than you might think. And just envision the world where you could ask that question about that 40, by the way, it's 42 inches, 42-inch guardrail requirement, and you could ask it and receive a response, perhaps not instantaneously, but within a quick order, within a reasonable amount of time. And let's face it, the next generation that I see already in the room, and certainly the next generation coming up in my profession, this is where we're at. Most of us don't want to pick up the telephone. I didn't even know what chat service was until a couple of years ago. And most of us now want that type of information and almost that instantaneous response in order to be able to complete our job. So it's really stemmed from our social media, where our society is going in general. And I can see that spilling over into the workplace, and I see it happening daily. And so for those of us on the governmental service provider side, if we're not able to keep up, then in my opinion, we are becoming an impediment of you being able to succeed. And so it's going to be a challenge for us. It's going to be one that is easier talked about than to be put into place. But that's the one thing I would love to see you ask us more for, and for us to provide to you back.
Great, thank you all. There were a lot of good questions that came in. Obviously, we don't have time to go through them all, and honestly, a lot were answered. But these three guys are going to help us answer all of them anyway. So in about a week or so, we're going to publish all the answers to the questions that everybody asked, both here and online. They were all good questions, and we appreciate the thought that went into them, so thank you. Before we finish up, I want to give each of you just a minute or two to say something maybe we didn't touch that means something to you.
I don't know. I think we were fairly long-winded, so John likes to talk.
Well, we'll let him go last. Yeah.
And it's a mystery. You don't know if I mean JC or John.
No, like, John has mentioned, I think, like I said, our websites are moving forward. A lot of our information, we're trying to be as transparent as we can. Those questions are there. Like I said, we've got our checklist back there. Obviously, we know it's not a catch-all, but at least being consistency in the phrasing, things like that. We are working a lot better with the city and county to try to provide as consistent a process as we can. And I guess I'll be after to ask any specific job site questions, because I know a few of those are around here, too.
Yeah, and I guess I got the most gray hairs up here, and I've earned I've earned every one of them. I'm really proud of them. But first of all, I'd like to thank the association, the local chapter, Tampa Bay AIA. You guys have been around for many, many years. You have an outstanding record in terms of all the professional associations. I'm delighted that you've stayed engaged. Not only amongst yourselves and for yourselves, but that you've had the desire and the wisdom to reach out to groups like us and to see and include us in your journey. I know that we are all part of the same journey, and that is from inception to end. We all have our respective roads. Some of them are lengthy, some of them are shorter. But I've always looked at ourselves as building officials, plan reviewers, inspectors, permit technicians, et cetera, as true partners and facilitators of everything that you guys are engaged with. And I get just really jazzed up about, looking around town and seeing what, we collectively have been able to put together in high quality, very outstanding products. Not everything is a, design award, but the simple, straightforward buildings that folks are living in, folks are working in, playing in, being educated in, are all part of what makes a neighborhood and makes a community strong. And I'm extremely proud of being part of all of that. And I'm extremely proud of being up here with my two associates from our surrounding jurisdictions. And I think we collectively have a strong and very positive presence. And please take us all up on these offers. We're not untouchable. You can reach us. Even though I have, at least I thought I had my contact information up there on the slide. JC slipped a lot of the cards in his pocket, and I didn't see Don bring anything. But anyway, we can all be reached. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. We're all pretty easygoing folks, and we just love this whole profession and love to be part of it. And I look forward to helping you continue to be successful and deliver quality products to your clients that are out there. So thank you again for having us.
Well, thank you, John and JC and Don, for joining us today to explain a little bit about what you can do for us and what we can do for you to make the process a little bit easier. So that's great. So. And I'd like to thank one more time Quorum and our other sponsors, MPAD and Summit Design Build, and our friend Jonathan Moore over here, who not only is a sponsor, but is your incoming vice president for AIA Tampa Bay. So thank you all for helping us out there. And we're here for you too. The whole reason we want to have this forum today, and we're going to continue on every year with new things happening, is we want to make accessibility between what these guys do and what we do an easier thing. And great strides we've made already. We're going to make them every single year. So please reach out to them, take up on their offers, reach out to us, the Advocacy Committee. You can find my email at aiatampabay.org, and we can help each other out and keep building Tampa Bay the way it is. It's great. So thank you.